Hi everyone, this is David from MyStartupTV, and today I'm talking with business coach and mentor and advisor Tala Chisholm. So Tala, welcome to today's program.
Thank you, David. Welcome to you.
What about clients, or sorry, startups that think too big too quickly?
Okay,
what
so
can we talk about?
yeah, I see that a lot as well. You know, not just the people that I deal with or that I mentor, but I just see that all around, really. Many of the examples is that people look at Facebook, they look at, you know, Google, they look at Skype, they look at Gumtree, they look at all these platforms and things online, the free apps that have, you know, 1 million downloads, or packages that offer free images, or free emailing platforms, or free messaging platforms, or free accounting systems, free. And then with an upgrade to a paid version, right? So the premium version. And they think, I can do that. I can offer this particular missing link within this particular industry, and I'll offer it free. And then, you know, thousands of people are going to take it up. And then a few of those thousands of people are going to want to take up the premium features. And then I'm going to make money. So it's great, again, great aspirations.
Sounds so easy.
It sounds so easy, right? But it's not. To get those free users costs money. It costs a great number one. To create this platform costs oodles of money. Usually, you know, double as much as you've been quoted for the development costs, from my experience anyway. And then, of course, the marketing, because people are not going to just say, oh, I want to go and download this app, unless they've been told about it, or it's showed up on a search. And how does it show up on a search? Because you created an ad for it on AdWords, or put an ad on Facebook or whatever, and you had to convince that customer to sign up as a free user. And then that customer sign up as a free user had to actually use the platform in order to decide, oh yeah, this is a good little platform. I'm going to use this thing for everything from now on. In relation to this industry. And then, yeah, Bob's your uncle. Everything's going to work out from there. But again, it doesn't. It costs money. Marketing is an expensive process. You're paying, I don't know, $1 a click in most of the industries. Some industries like $15 a click or $50 a click. So
it's
definitely
crazy.
Yes. It's just nuts. But let's just call it $1 a click, just for the sake of the argument. And you have to, you know, let's say that out of 100 people that sign up, 10, which is a high number, but let's just say 10 will take up your premium version. And usually to advertise to get 100 people on, that conversion rate is something like anywhere from 2% to 10% if you're really good at marketing. But how much did it cost you to get those people? So sometimes it might cost you $500 to get your first paying customer. Maybe if you're lucky, if you're good.
That's right. And that's on top of the cost to develop in the first place.
Exactly. So, and then the market, it's not just the advertising, it's the marketer that's going to make that happen for you. Because marketers are everywhere these days. There's like a digital marketer behind every bloody house in the street, really. But the good ones, they're worth a lot of money. They charge a lot of money. They'll charge you, you know, 120 to 180 bucks an hour, more if they're really good. So it costs a great deal of money to get those free signups. Even though they're free, you still got to convince people to take it up. So what do? We end up with a paid customer costing you anywhere from 500 to $1,000 or something. Who knows? I don't, you know, I have not run one of those platforms myself, but I know the numbers well enough in marketing terms. So now, what would be the lifetime profit value? Where's your break-even point? All these things haven't been thought through. How do I know that they will continue using it? What effort do I need to make to make sure that they continue using it? How many things have you signed up for that after the day you've tried it, you have not used it once? I know that, you know, like hundreds of things. So that has a cost. the maintenance of them, this platform that you're giving this free service to people, that has a cost. Every time you get new users on board, they're going to use more resources. You're going to be paying money and getting nothing in return. So if your numbers haven't been thought through and cash flow forecasts haven't been thought through, and you haven't got, anything to show for your solution, you also can't get investment in the majority of cases, which is what you're going to need to make that jump. So you can't just jump like that and expect or have these dreams without understanding what happens between A to Z to get to that point.
Exactly so, and especially when in this day and age, so many people, I mean, the internet is full of free stuff, absolutely full, and people expect so much for free. So they're happy to use programs for free, and then not bother with the upgrade. And even with the upgrades are $9.95 a month, or $19.95 a month, or $29.95 a month. And if you've spent $500 to get this client, and they're only paying $19.95, $20 a month, that's a long time to get a return on investment.
Exactly. And then another example of things where people have, thought too big or haven't thought it through, even if the product or the service you're charging for it, and that's, that's part of the way, that's part of your strategy, but it actually requires a large community of users or suppliers or whatever it is to make it work. Like I actually, this is an example, a personal example, where I have three cats now and a dog, right? So zoo, and a
just full disclosure, I'm not a cat person, I'm a dog person.
Well, I wasn't until we got the cats, and I thought, oh, they're cool. Anyway, so I was looking for a solution to put a tag on them so that in case they get lost or something, we can find them. You can tell us where they are, especially the dog, because the dog was just running off whenever he got the chance. So I bought this thing online. It was $70-something for each tag, so it wasn't cheap. I thought I probably should have, read it a bit more. But the way it works is that it relies on other users in the area having that app or their Wi-Fi connection or something in order to find your dog. So what if I don't have people in my area? It was mind-boggling when I started looking for my dog and going, okay, so where's my dog? And why can't it see my dog? And I read a bit more about it, and it was just crazy. I'm thinking, how can you do that without having a good, solid community? And how much money would that cost to get that solid, circle of people that have this app, whose mobile phones for the guy up the road is going to tell you that your dog is right in front of their doorstep. It's just mind-boggling. I thought, well, that was just a nice, great waste of, I don't know, $200 or whatever it was. But that's an example.
And realistically, the only silver lining out of that is it's a good story to tell.
Exactly, right. And only yesterday I was talking to someone as well, and she was saying, oh, we got this really great product, but we're looking for investors. And I said, what is it? Again, I'm not going to go into details in your privacy, and people get all, precious about it. But it was a marketplace, a global marketplace. And all of her experience was she was an Amazon seller of some products. And then she thought of this idea of having a global marketplace that connects buyers and sellers globally in a particular industry. Okay, fine. But she thinks she needs $100,000. I'm thinking, oh my God, that's not practical in any way, shape, or form. And how would you possibly go from zero to a global marketplace with $100,000 in an industry that in the US is like $11.5 billion or something? And then her idea was, and I was saying, what do you know about these figures? What do you know about the trends? What do you know about how often people are doing this internationally, let alone nationally? And she goes, well, we're going to be part of our strategy is to change the consumer behavior. And I said, okay, so you're going to change the consumer behavior of an $11.5 billion industry in the US with 100 grand. Again, big dreams are great, but we've just got to still bring them down to a reality check. This is the biggest issue here, is that the numbers, we never really put enough thought into the numbers. You know, I'm a numbers person. I'm an engineer. That's you know, I like spreadsheets, but still, it's all about the reality.
Exactly.
What you see in your bank is numbers. So whether you like them or not, you're just going to have to live with the fact that you got to do your numbers. And that's my rant.
And what? Absolutely, I completely get it. And the thing that people, for the most part, the people with these big ideas don't realize that if they're after 100 grand from somebody, that somebody will look at their idea and just shake their head and go, I'm not going to give you 100 grand. I'm not going to give you 100 cents.
Correct. Convince me that there is, that even if it was a big industry, what do you know about that industry? Have you been in that industry for the last 10 years? Do you know who the competitors are? Do you know how much you pay for advertising? Do you know how many people use this internationally? How can you break into something like this and expect, you know, global success with so little experience and so little detail? That's where, you know, the biggest problem that I think people have is they have these big dreams, and it's not impossible. You know, Google, the people that made Google Google wasn't always Google, Facebook wasn't always Facebook. That's great, but they are the absolute minority. And you know, there is a way, of course, they created that path, but there had to be a lot in between to get from zero to that, or to anything that's global in nature.
Just something that you, as you were talking, came to mind, that, and I don't think we need to discuss it today, but it'll be for another podcast. But in alignment with the thinking too big and too small, I'm thinking that people don't necessarily, or often don't, think of a proper USP, their unique selling proposition. So they think they have an idea, but they don't realize that they're probably not the only person in this world that's thought of that idea. In fact, there's a very good chance that it's been thought of 1,000 times and it's not worked 1,000 times. So why should theirs work? And even if it has worked 1,000 times, why should people deal with them? So what is unique about their take on this particular business? What is it that unique selling proposition that will make them successful as opposed to anyone else? So I'm just going to throw that on the table as maybe a question for another podcast, but I think it dovetails in quite well with too small and too big. What do you think?
Yeah, totally agree. And the part that I can just throw in there that relates to what we're talking about today is it comes down to the way they approach it at the outset. Yes. I'm putting it to you, that is the biggest difference between those that make it and those that don't, is those that make it have a better strategy to the beginnings that does not revolve around getting an investment of, you know, well, first of all, it has to be a reasonably thought through investment, but also I've spoken to people who had plans of looking for $15 million investments, and for something that they have not known enough about to be able to ask that sort of number. So it really comes down to, how do we get it from, you know, the zero where we're at to something that's reasonable, that shows some hope, and then we can present that to an investor, and then the investor will say, okay, well, I can see that you've created something. It shows something about you. It shows something about the idea. It shows something about, you know, your USP, etc. And yes, I can see how we can move this to the next level. But yeah, that's the biggest difference. I mean, it's not just about the software world, you know. This whole thinking too big thing can exist elsewhere as well. Like I was talking to someone who has this new product that they've just developed with a factory, and she was looking at offering it to all the major chains. So we're talking Target, we're talking Kmart, we're talking all of those chains, right? great thing when you think of it, sounds good, very impractical if your business is so small it cannot take this sort of pressure. Major chains have very onerous requirements when it comes to products and packaging and, you know, barcoding and
payment terms.
And they'll return anything and everything. You know, they'll just accept anything. But you go to Big W and want to return something that you've pulled apart, they'll take it. They won't even ask a question, because
That's
and
right.
then they'll expect you to take back, as in the supplier. So there's that pressure, and then there's the pressure of cash flow, because they're not going to pay you up front or 2 months before you've supplied the goods. They're going to pay 30, 60, 90 days, I don't know, whatever terms that they decide. Not what
Yes.
you want them to pay, is what they decide. And sometimes they're late, and sometimes so on and so on and so on. So there is so much involved, and it's so complicated, and it's so cash flow intensive. We've dealt with major chains, and we had a distribution business, and we were already in the, I think it was $12-13 million turnover at the time, so we weren't small, and that was a pain. That was an absolute pain to deal with them, let alone doing it as a startup with no real cash reserves. So that's another example that's outside of the software world, as a real life example, not just software. Another example was a startup who set out their first intentions to target government contracts or local government.
Wow, that's tough.
Oh my God. Again, the money's good. Yeah, sure. It all sounds great. All sounds wonderful. Oh, this is a $200,000 project. This is a $200 million project, but within that particular startup's world, it was $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 projects. Sounds like good money. I agree. I don't disagree. But do you have the contacts? Do you have the what's going to happen when you're waiting for payments and all your contractors are waiting to get paid? They're going to have to get paid before you are ever going to get paid, the majority of the time.
Yes.
Obviously, as a startup, you're not going to have that many staff. You don't want to load yourself up with staff, so you're going to try and use contractors. You're going to you're going to be paying more than you would have been paying for staff, and the cash flow and their requirements and tendering, and oh my God, there are a number of things that can go wrong, and any one of them could take you down. So
exactly.
Again, not saying don't think big, but maybe we just need to go through a few steps before we get to that one, because there's just too much on the line when it gets to that one. That's another example.